There is a children's story about a duck, a rabbit, a squirrel, and an eagle. They each wished that they had the talents of the other, and so they decided to organize a school. They would have classes in climbing, swimming, running, and flying. And to make it easier to keep track of everything, all the animals took all the subjects. Now, the duck was excellent in swimming. In fact, he was better than his instructor. But he only made passing grades in flying and was very poor at running. Since he was slow at running, he had to drop swimming class and stay after school to practice running. Pretty soon, his webbed feet were badly worn, so he was only average at swimming. But average was quite acceptable, so nobody really worried about it, except the duck. Now, the rabbit started at the top of his class in running, but developed a nervous twitch in his leg muscles because he was doing so much makeup work in swimming and climbing. And soon he was slower than the squirrel. In flying, he was a total disaster. He couldn't get more than 2 feet off the ground. So they gave him a failing grade and told him over and over again that you need to work harder. Now, the squirrel was excellent in climbing, but was constantly frustrated in flying because the teacher made him start from the ground up instead of from the treetop down. He developed Charlie horses from overexertion, and so he only got a C in climbing and a D in running. The eagle, he was a problem child. He was severely disciplined for being a nonconformist. In climbing classes, he beat all the others to the top of the tree, but insisted upon doing it his own way to get there. He did the same thing in running class, and he absolutely refused to swim. Instead, he insisted upon diving at the water and touching it with his claws. So finally, they expelled him from school. Everyone was very sad at school. They were miserable, and all of them felt worthless. I know this sounds like a silly story, but really, is it so silly? How many of us see things that other people have and wish we had the same? I'm guilty. There are a lot of things that I wish I could do, or things I had. For example, I wish I had Jimmy Akin's knowledge of the scriptures, or Father Tyler's ability to speak 2 different languages. At my CrossFit workouts, I'm envious of all those other guys who can lift so much more weight than me and are much stronger. And maybe, we wish we had a singing ability like somebody on The Voice, or we had the Waltons' money. I think you can relate to what I'm talking about. We see people that are wizards at math or computers or public speaking. We see Traylon Green quarterbacking the Razorbacks and using his speed and elusiveness to make big play after big play. We might think that others are much more prettier than us or more popular than us. We wish we could be like others. We are called to be God's body on the earth. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be better, to improve ourselves. Sure, I could take some online course and learn to speak a new language, or I could work on lifting heavier weights. Students need to do their homework in math, and athletes need to work on the weaker parts of their games. Maybe we could go on a diet or start exercising and become healthier. And we should all study the scriptures more. Yes, each one of us needs to constantly be trying to be better people. We would all agree on that. But we got to be on guard against focusing on another's gifts and forgetting the gifts that each one of us has on our own. Some of us, especially teenagers, tend to focus on the gift of others and forget about the gifts that they have. And after a while, it tears them down. And we think that we don't have anything special about us. But this is not the case. God has given each one of us unique talents, special gifts, and no 2 people have the exact same gifts. God creates diversity. The rabbit and the squirrel were meant to be different, and it's the same with each one of us. We go against God's design by trying to make everybody be the same. This is what St. Paul is saying in our reading from Corinthians today. He speaks about the various spiritual gifts, gifts of wisdom, gifts of knowledge, gifts of healing, gifts of prophecy, gifts of discernment of the spirits. He goes on to say that these gifts are given to each individual. He says, to each individual, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for some benefit. To each individual, he reminds us that all the gifts are different, but they all come from God. And next week, St. Paul continues with the same theme when he speaks about the various kinds of parts of the body: the foot, the hands, the ear, the eye, the nose, the head, and so on. All are necessary. There are different parts, but one body. You know, the foot cannot say that because I'm not part of the hand, then I'm not part of the body. No one part is important than any of the others. St. Paul says that God has placed the parts, each one of them, as he intended. Intended for what? And that's the key part of this. Each one of us has been put on this earth to be God's eyes and ears, his hands and his feet. Each one of us has a task in God's kingdom. We are all not the same because God had different uses for each one of us. And St. Paul says that some will be apostles, other prophets, teachers, healers, administrators, assistants. St. Paul is saying that each one of us has a job in God's kingdom, and we were given special gifts, each one of us, to complete this task. This coming week, think about the gifts we have and not about the ones we wish we have, and how we can use them for God's work. We may not realize what our talents are, but God knows, and if we live as God intended by helping others, our talents will become known. Maybe we're a great speaker, or our words can inspire others. Maybe our silence, though, is a gift by just sitting with somebody who's hurting. Maybe it's our smile or our enthusiasm that encourages someone. Perhaps someone notices our compassion towards someone less fortunate, and it leads them to do the same. There are many gifts. The duck, the rabbit, the squirrel, and the eagle were all trying to be something they were not intended to be. They saw what others could be and forgot about what they could do. In the end, they were all miserable. If our focus is always on the things that others have or the things that we can't do, we will end up with that same fate. Instead of trying to be something we're not, we need to be who we are, one of God's children with a task to do.